a lottery that will also allow casinos with table games and slot machines, and also sports betting. That bill is now in the Senate, and I can assure you there is heavy work behind the scenes on that piece of legislation. It obviously it will not pass the way it passed the House, or looking the same way the bill did in the House. I have a feeling it's very tight. And more than likely, I think something that comes out of the Senate probably would not lead to an expansion of casinos. I may be wrong, but I would imagine the sports betting probably comes off that, and there will be a lottery component. There is discussion of where that money goes. I have heard something along the lines of a third for education, a third for the general fund, and a third for infrastructure. The infrastructure portion, I really like. I think that I am sure that in your dealings with the Department of Transportation over companies wanting to locate in your areas, they're not always very easy to deal with. And I've always said, and they're great friends of mine, I love them to death. They've always been responsive most of the time. But a lot of times the reason why they don't have to be responsive is because their money goes directly to them. The legislature doesn't approve it. So if you have a company that comes in and wants to expand in your town, and DOT is giving them problems, and then they engage with their local senator or representative, DOT really doesn't have to listen, because DOT just gets the money straight away. So I think it would be wise if there was a block of money that DOT had to be responsive for, that the legislature would have to approve for various projects, roads, bridges, even broadband. I think would be wise. So that could be a little bit of a positive side effect of any new revenues that would be associated with gaming. So stay tuned. There's no timeline of when that may come out of the Senate, or if they can get the votes in the Senate, but that one's a big one. And obviously, as I mentioned last week, BCA is neutral on gaming. The Senate locked down a good bit last week. They took on the divisive concepts legislation. BCA has been monitoring this. Right now, it is only dealing with public institutions of higher education and schools. So it would prevent those entities from having costly diverse DEI components in their institutions. It also bans the teaching of divisive concepts in those institutions. So that was pretty much week 3. A lot of focus on very specific pieces of legislation. And then there was some, obviously some committee work. We were very effective at being able to keep some bills that were harmful to the business community from coming out of committee. So we had a really good week playing defense, and obviously we're going to continue to monitor those bills in the House and the Senate. So this week was pretty robust as well. The House passed HB 129. That is the Choose Act. That creates education savings accounts so that parents can use up to $7,000 of public dollars that frankly is their tax dollars to attend a private school or a better school of their choice. So we think that this is important for education in the state of Alabama. And obviously, the big news was what came from the Alabama Supreme Court and their IVF ruling. That really, as y'all know, sent shock waves throughout the country, and certainly here at home. Both the Senate and the House jumped on finding a fix very quickly, and rightfully so. And so you've seen, I think there's about 7 bills dealing with IVF. You'll see them filter those down, and they seem to be coalescing around 2, which would be SB 159, Senator Melson in the Senate. It passed out of the Senate, and then HB 237, Representative Collins, passed out of the House. They will more than likely get together, and they have made this fix a priority. Let me be very clear about that. And so they will get together and work out their differences and get the best piece of legislation through. I'm fairly certain of that. As I mentioned, gaming is in the Senate. There was a public hearing in the Senate Tourism Committee this past week. They did not move the bill or vote on the bill, so it is still there. And again, there's ample discussion going on to try to work out their differences. Let me talk to you about a bill that we are extremely opposed to that was filed this week by Representative Rigsby. This is HB 238. This is coming back to the PBMs. Y'all remember the PBM bill several years ago that I actually, when I was majority leader, got thrown in the middle of the negotiations on that. The pharmacists promised us that they would not come back for several years. Well, they forgot about that every single year since. We love our pharmacies. We love our pharmacists. And we want to make sure that our pharmacists are doing well, but we don't want that to be done at the expense of the business community or the consumer. And HB 238 will do that. HB 238 would prevent pharmacy benefit managers, those are PBMs, from reimbursing pharmacies less than their actual acquisition costs and from receiving different payment amounts than what they pay pharmacies. Now that sounds fair, correct? Well, not so much. So I will read, this is pretty complicated, but I will read the talking points that we have to y'all, and you'll understand really why this just isn't the way to help our pharmacies. So the bill would raise consumer costs for prescription drugs by $275 per year per person. Now, again, if we're going to pay them more, that money is going to come from somewhere, and it's going to come from our businesses and from our consumers. So by imposing a $10.64 fee on every prescription, this bill is simply a new pharmacy tax placed directly on the people of Alabama. This will result in consumers paying more, not just in premiums, but also at the pharmacy counter. The bill does nothing to address the real problem with prescription costs, and that's the actual price of the drug set by the manufacturer. Manufacturers know that if the state of Alabama mandates a cost-plus model, they can continue increasing drug prices that will be passed on to employers and their employees. This bill would also hurt businesses in the state of Alabama by increasing costs to the employers who provide prescription drug coverage. Increasing the cost of prescription drug coverage not only hurts existing businesses, it also harms economic development. Most of this bill is just a renewed attempt by APA and APCI to relitigate items they sought in 2021, but were unsuccessful following long, difficult negotiations, which I was right in the middle of. One of the few new provisions, though, would allow pharmacies that are committing fraud, waste, or abuse an opportunity to cover their tracks by requiring advance notification to the pharmacy of an investigation. Most pill mills uncovered in Alabama were discovered as a result of an audit. Giving advance notice will just allow the few bad actors to continue to do the wrong thing. So again, we are all for helping our pharmacies, but not at the expense of business. And this bill, without a doubt, does that. We have called for a public hearing in committee next week, and have lined up several businesses around the state who, obviously will be affected to speak on why this bill will be bad for business. The Senate, toward the end of the week, well, through the week, took up sunset bills. That's an annual kind of housekeeping deal that they have to do. Sometimes they start in the Senate, sometimes in the House. And so that took them most of the time. So again, a few bills that we continue to monitor. That one we strongly oppose. And let me tell you, why this bill is going to be difficult is because everyone loves their local pharmacy. Here in Marshall County, we've got Buddy Bunch. Maury knows him. We love him to death. And so a lot of them go with those, they side with those pharmacists, and they don't really understand the deep impact. And this really could be a political problem for them if they don't believe us on what this is going to do to increase drug costs, because there's going to be a lot of mad consumers out there, and employers if this goes into effect and their costs go up, and they're going to hear from them. So we've got our work cut out for us on that. Shifting gears back to Alabama Strong, we have put the finishing touches on phase 2 of that. That is our effort against the UAW, unionizing Alabama's auto plants. You probably saw where the UAW announced that they had 50% cards signed at Mercedes and Vance. Phase 2 will be billboards around Tuscaloosa, around Montgomery, radio ads. We have a really good radio ad that's going to be going up, and we continue our social media presence. So we're going to step that up, geofenced around those two areas. So phase 2 kicking off next week. On the political front, elections Tuesday. Don't forget to go vote and make sure your members vote. The BCA's election guide is up on our website, so I'd invite you to take a look at that. We mostly this year's is a slate of the Chief Justice is up. BCA chose not to endorse in that, and several other mostly court elections, and our very own Katie Britt, some of you may have seen, was invited to deliver the Republican response at the State of the Union on Tuesday. So that's a really big deal. So Alabama will be in the spotlight, and I know we're sure that Katie's going to do a fantastic job for us. So with that, be glad to take any questions.
Clay, now that we're in March, I know the legislature's planning 2 spring breaks this year. Can you walk through maybe what we're expecting out of this month? Because I know there are several bills that we've talked about last time, but will probably start coming to the forefront: the workforce, child care tax credit, and the housing. We're expecting those this month, right?
Yes, we are. We should, after the break, be in a position to have those bills filed. That's the child care tax credit that we're very interested in, and then the legislation associated with workforce development. Those bills should be finalized. There's still some tweaks to be made in that, but as soon as the breaks are over, we will have those bills filed, the sponsors identified, and well, we already have that, but and then begin to move those bills as a package. We are working with House and Senate leadership to actually do a fly around the state promoting those, much like we did the game plan. So we want to make a big splash with it because it's a very important package that we believe is going to move the needle. So great question. That will be coming up in March, and it'll be a good month for business. Any other questions?
Say real quick, and this is just more curiosity. Yellowhammer reported yesterday that Saban's going to Mercedes today. Do we know what he's going to say?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. We'll save that for Coach Saban. But you know, him owning some Mercedes dealerships, maybe we'll see. We've been working that one pretty hard.
Interesting. And I'm going to shut up and let other people ask questions. But one thing more on the federal level, yesterday, the U.S. Chamber put out about some new banking regulations that they're following pretty closely around access to capital for small business. If you guys get, more on that, certainly something that we're definitely interested in that, obviously.
Yeah,
So
yeah, we would be too. Access to capital, as y'all know, is one of the most important foundations of our economy and American society. So we would also. I have not seen that page, but I'm making a note of that.
I'm forwarding you that email as we speak.
Perfect.
So yeah,
Thank you.
it's on its
way. Okay.
They did say that 100 local chambers across the country have already signed on in opposition. So if any of you all on the call are interested in that, I'll see if I can put a link in the chat, but otherwise we'll follow up with that as well.
Perfect.
All right, I'm going to be quiet, let anybody else ask some questions. I saw one, I think, from Jennifer. Let me see if I can get to the chat. Oh, Jennifer said if anyone can prevent new cards, he can. But
maybe, yeah.
Maybe, hopefully.
Yeah.
All right, let me see if I can get that.
We've also got a op-ed coming in from Tyrone Prothrow. Trying to get a few athletes, Tuscaloosa is kind of into football over there, War Eagle. But hey, I'll yell roll tide if we beat the Union in Tuscaloosa, I promise.
I think we all will.
Clay, is there anything specifically that, all of the things that we've talked about, of course, are very important, but that we should be really pounding our local legislators about as chambers, in your opinion, right now?
Right now, particularly your House members on this HB 238.
Okay.
That bill is in the House, and they really, my fear is that they get up there and they're going to hear from Big Blue Cross and like, oh yeah, of course they're against it. But and I don't want them to lose sight that this is going to increase costs. I mean, whether you're taking from all the consumers around and giving it to a specific group, i.e. the pharmacies. And again, we need healthy pharmacies, particularly in rural Alabama. Rural Alabama, you can go to Douglas, Alabama, here in Marshall County, and Jim Gann, the pharmacist there, he's the local healthcare.
Right.
And oftentimes, those small independent pharmacies are, they open their doors late at night for a sick child or anything like that. which is kind of my point to the power that they have, and the good, because of the goodwill that they have provided over the years. And again, we want to support them, but just not this way. The way would be against the drug manufacturers, not saddling business and the consumer with increased costs. So, again, I really hope that the legislature will figure this out, because you're gonna have some mad people when their bills jump up there, and then they have to tell them why, because of an act that the legislature did. And this is kind of the disadvantage that I have, that I'm banned from lobbying for 5 years, because I can't just go over there and tell my friends, y'all, you really need to stay away from this. So that's really the big one, Crystal, is that one. And again, it's in the House right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So Clay, Jennifer had asked in the chat, you mentioned that the real issue is pharmacy cost, is the drug cost. We know it's at the federal level a huge issue, but is there anything that can happen at the state level with drug cost?
We're not sure. I mean, obviously, we would be very, very open to discussing that, and it would, to me, it would behoove the Pharmacy Association to work with the business community on that, instead of ambushing with a bill like this and working behind the scenes with no discussion. We had heard that they were working on something, but had no idea what it was. And frankly, this bill reflects the stuff that in those last negotiations that were absolutely off the table, and they compiled them all together, and boom, here's the bill of all the stuff y'all said, the business community said we can't have it because it's going to increase our costs. So in the last PBM bill, it was reflective of what the business community could support to help do that, and to help our pharmacies. So we're, again, still very, very open to that. We want to bring down drug costs, but I'm afraid, to your point, a lot of it is federal, and a lot of it is dealing with those manufacturers.
Clay, I have a question about the gaming bill as it relates to what you were saying about the legislator approval. In our community, our two main arteries are really run by DOT. We have two, state highways that come through. What is that going to mean to a community? I mean, will the municipality have any control over that? Any businesses coming in, or is it just wide open? I just want some clarification on that.
As far as the money that would be appropriated for, or excuse me, the gaming money that would be for infrastructure.
Yeah.
Probably not. I would imagine the legislature would it would be earmarked for infrastructure, roads, bridges, broadband, maybe ports. And then the legislature would appropriate that. They would decide how they're going to spend that. I mean, they could, for instance, earmark it to 6-lane 65. They could say we're going to use it for broadband grants. They could, I think it would be important, again, for not only be important to make DOT hungry for it, or the thought that I kind of have is that would be a carrot for DOT, that they would need to be more responsive and more sort of customer friendly, because we're in the same boat in Marshall County. I've always used Elmore County as kind of a peer to Marshall County. y'all are actually very, very similar to us. You have a lake, you have small towns, your infrastructure is very similar. So we're in the same boat with 231 and 431. And those arteries, when you're working on developments through there, DOT can be very difficult to work with, as I'm sure you have experienced. So, again, my thought behind that would be, there would be a pot of money that DOT would have to play nice about in order to receive additional funding, if that makes sense. I've always had that thought based off my experiences, because again, the current road and bridge money and Rebuild Alabama money from the gas tax goes directly to them. So the legislature doesn't appropriate that year, so for year in and year out, so they really don't have to be responsive. And I think that's a big part of that problem.
All right, we're just at 10:30. Anyone else have anything for Clay? Thank you so much. I mean, I think they just get better. And, I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. My pleasure.
All right.
Anything else?
Anything else for the greater good? All right, Clay, thank you again so much. For everyone on the call, they are recorded. They'll be placed. Carla, correct me if I'm wrong. We're going to put them in the information hub, where you'll have access through Growth Zone to rewatch. Clay, I'm going to follow up and see if we maybe can get those talking points on the PBM, because
Absolutely.
next Friday we will send out a recap with everything in it. I have the housing information that you sent. We'll add that as well. But last thing from me, if you haven't already, please sign up for Executive Leadership Conference. We've got a great agenda. We'll be there the end of April in the Shoals. Very excited about that. So please make plans to join us. And we appreciate it. Everybody have a great weekend.
Thank y'all.
Thanks, Clay.
You're welcome.